So while this chapter did slow down the pacing, it certainly did not disappoint. We have a lot to discuss when it comes to SUKUNA'S bathing ritual and also Kenjaku's secret plans for the culling games. Now we're gonna get into all of that in this review, so without wasting any more time, let's begin. Picking up from the last chapter, it appears that Kenjaku has finally reunited with Sukuna. Now on the first pages for the chapter, we have a conversation between Kenjaku and Urame. We see that they're in some sort of building and we have this gigantic curse in front of Kenjaku. We don't know what it is, but we find out later on in the chapter. Now the interesting thing about this is that Urame is basically questioning Kenjaku on when he's going to end the culling games. Then we have Kenjaku replying saying that my goal for the great merger of mankind with Tengen cannot happen until the culling game ends. Then we have a side text saying though I told Choso otherwise. Now this part was very interesting to me, so I went back and read the fight between Kenjaku and Choso, and basically all Kenjaku said was that the culling game has already served its purpose. The preparation for the merger of all non-sorcerers in Japan have ended. Now this isn't technically lying because he said the preparation, he didn't say that it actually happened, so he really didn't tell him anything different, maybe just worded it differently. Now Urame then replied saying that you say that, but you're the one who designed it to go on and on like this in the first place because Kenjaku is the one who created the culling games. Now Kenjaku said something very interesting. He said that the only reason I was able to create something as unreasonable as the culling games was because I shouldered the burden of the equally unreasonable binding vow to eventually end the never-ending game. So again, like the binding vow itself is so broken because basically all he's saying here is that he was able to create the culling games because he made a binding vow that he would end the game. So the binding vow that he made is that he would eventually end the game by himself, but in return the game would continue on and on. So basically the culling games would last as long as he wants it to because he has promised to end the culling games. It's kind of weird because there's a loophole there because all he has to do is just keep it running for as long as possible, as long as he wants to, because he can just end it at any point in time. This binding vow thing is kind of weird. It's very like trippy. So, we'll see how it plays out though. Now what also intrigues me about this entire conversation is that Urame seems to have a dominant position over Kenjaku. He seems to be the one ordering him around. So it seems that Kenjaku is below Urame, at least in position. Because I doubt he can actually beat Kenjaku. But maybe he can, maybe we don't know. We'll see later on in the series. But his entire demeanor just screams, yo, I'm looking down at this peasant. And just how he's talking to Kenjaku as well. He's like, yo, then get on with it. Why did you even come back here? And it isn't even friendly banter because later on in this chapter when Kenjaku was playing around, Urame replied saying, how do you even have the gall to run your mouth like that? So it very much seems like even back then Urame did have a higher position as maybe SUKUNA'S right hand man and Kenjaku wasn't, but again we'll see how it plays out. Now Kenjaku said that he's basically waiting around to see how the bath plays out. He's very interested in SUKUNA'S bath, and then he went on to explain what exactly is happening. So it says here that I knew it was originally used as a ritual to transform vessels treasured as family heirlooms into cursed tools in order to protect them from outsiders. And then he went on to explain the process itself by saying that a solution of cursed energy is created by grinding and straining organisms chosen in a Kodoku ritual. The vessels then marinated for 10 months and 10 days. And just to clarify, when it says vessels earlier, it's mostly referring to objects, not human beings like let's say Yuji or Megumi. Also, the Kodoku ritual mentioned by Kenjaku is 100% real. Basically what they do is place multiple insects into a single jar, then allow them to eat each other, and then a surviving insect is basically taken out and the fluids extracted and used to curse individuals. So it's a very similar process here, but the big difference, as mentioned by Kenjaku in the next panel, is that he wasn't expecting that they'd use cursed spirits to reconstruct the ritual. So basically they're adding cursed spirits themselves to the ritual instead of just using insects. And this is funny because it brings me back to Ryumen Sukuna's origin video that I did maybe a few hours ago, and I basically explained how the conjoined twins were placed into a room with multiple individuals and was basically forced to conduct the Kodoku ritual. But again, just like in this case, instead of using insects, they were the subject themselves, so they had to eat other people in order to survive. So that's pretty much where Gege is getting that reference from. Now Urame went on to say that when cursed spirits are killed, they become dust thanks to the disappearance reaction. He does say that there are some exceptions, but a piece that is cut off a cursed spirit will disappear the same way. He then explained that that's why his method has been to pin down the cursed spirits, then freeze its core with his technique. Now Kenjaku does look somewhat confused here, which I'm not really buying. I feel like Kenjaku is like over 1,000 years old. He should know what this process is. He shouldn't be asking these questions. So he's basically saying, yo, what's the point of submerging in something like this? And Urame replied saying to get closer to evil. He then explained that we do this so that Megumi's sense of self and soul sinks that much deeper into darkness. And then we skip to this cool scene of Sukuna emerging from the water, and he's basically still in Megumi's body. Now what I find very weird and interesting here is that Kenjaku asked Sukuna if he's going to stay in that body, and Sukuna replied saying, I'm going to be fighting among sorcerers, it's better to maintain this kind of appearance. Then the conversation switched over to Sukuna, and he's basically using Kogane to locate Megumi's sister. Now because Megumi's sister is being possessed by Yorozu, who is a male by the way, Sukuna will need to end both if it comes to it. Now Kenjaku does seem like he's trying to tease Sukuna, he's trying to like fish for some information. But Sukuna isn't really budging, so he basically tells Kenjaku that he doesn't care for Yorozu and that he just needs the vessel, which of course is referring to Megumi's sister. Now Sukuna's plan is more devious than just fighting or just getting a hold of his sister. He basically wants to destroy her, he wants to destroy the body itself, because at this point in time I guess he's thinking that the soul itself has been extinguished or removed. So now he just needs to destroy the body itself so that Megumi doesn't have a single hope of resurrecting his sister or bringing her back to her body. This of course in theory should break Megumi and allow Sukuna to fully gain control of his body and his cursed energy. Now they basically left for the Sendai colony because that's where Yorozu is and that's where Sukuna wants to be. But then Kenjaku said something weird again. He said that he'll give Sukuna a ride but in exchange for his points. Now this part is very interesting because at this point in the games it seems that everything is over. He has Tengen and he has the ability to end it at any point in time. Why would Kenjaku need points? It's weird and it doesn't make sense. Of course it will make sense when you get to it in the story, but right now it doesn't. So this part is actually very interesting to me and I like to see how it plays out. But then we basically skip to Sukuna arriving in the Sendai colony, and guess who he meets up? Ryu and Uro. And of course Uro is the smart one here, so she decides to bend down and kneel to Sukuna. But Ryu had something else in mind and he decided to challenge Sukuna in a battle of techniques. And I'm just gonna say, like, he tanked the first hit by Sukuna, and when the spoilers drop, we were all like, yo, this dude is very strong, and we saw what he did versus Yuta as well, even though Yuta was holding back, to be fair. Like, we saw what he did and is capable of doing, so him tanking the attack wasn't really a surprise to anyone, but it was good to see either way. But then we got further clarification that Sukuna isn't using his full power because it's being suppressed by Megumi himself. But then Sukuna replied laughing, saying he's impressed, saying that he tried to fillet him into 3 but you turned out better than expected. Then he said that sorry I took you too lightly, I won't hold back on the next one. So at this point we know it's GG's for Ryu, and that's basically what happens next. Ryu kinda jumps back to have space to use his curse technique, but then Sukuna completely blitzed this dude and basically cuts his head into thirds. It's absolutely crazy, so I'm actually looking forward to what happens next week. But then the chapter shifted and it basically shows Sukuna looking down on Yorozu, and Yorozu basically says, seems like you took over a different kid this time, and Sukuna replied saying, yeah, I like this face much better. And then it says in the bottom left, an encounter after 1,000 years old. And that's pretty much it for the chapter itself. Now something I did miss earlier is that in the first panel of the chapter it said that Kenjaku's group, which is referring to Kenjaku, Urame, and Sukuna, has returned to the Zenin clan base. What is their goal? And of course this is the same location Maki fought her father and also destroyed multiple cursed spirits, because this room, it looks to be the same one, and this room supposedly has multiple grade 2 cursed spirits, and it could be the same cursed spirits that Urame is using to create a bath for Sukuna. Now I'm sure that a lot of people were hoping to see like some backstory, some link between Yuji and some character from the past that's expounded on in this chapter, but that didn't happen. This chapter was way more grounded, to be honest, and I think that it just isn't time as yet for them to reveal it fully. But there are some sprinkles there which I mentioned earlier in this video, and I actually have an entire video itself, it's only 13 minutes, that explains the entire lore and backstory between or behind Sukuna and Yuji. So you guys can go check out that video after this one. I'll have it linked in the end cards. With that being said, guys, let me know your thoughts on the chapter itself. Do you think it was a great chapter? Do you think it was a good chapter? Do you think it was a bad chapter? What are your thoughts? And also remember to drop a like on the video itself, because YouTube recognizes engagement and uses it to promote the video itself. So engage with the video, comment down below and drop a like and get the conversation going. With that being said, guys, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.